On the program today, we take a look at what seems a war of words between the 2023 presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, and the National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Felix Morka. National Publicity Secretary of the All Progressives Congress, Felix Morka, is right here with me in the studio for more on this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
So they say you are the one threatening Peter Obi's life. But let me read a comment here for you. And this is what the media is talking about. You were quoted to have said that he's a prophet of doom and that he has crossed the line so many times and has it coming to him whatever he gets. What does that mean?
Now, I think this is the problem. When you read a portion of a whole answer to a question without reading the question, you can decide what you want to decide. But, that answer was much longer than what you just read. It was a question that was put to me by the Arise Television during the studio interview. And, since you read the portion, let me read the question that was put to me so that our viewers can get the context in which this conversation took place. Arise TV, you have actually hit back with a volley of attacks, calling Peter Obi a prophet of doom. Some of you have said that he is always embarking on voodoo economics that are not in line with current realities. Don't you think this is a slingshot that has gone beyond normal politicking? And then I gave a long answer, which this portion that you read didn't capture. Because when you read the entire thing, what I did say was in reference to the interviewer's question and reference to Peter Obi as the prophet of doom or as a voodoo economist. And I said that, Peter Obi had crossed so many lines of truth. And that if, anyone called him a prophet of doom, he has that coming. If anyone called him, a voodoo economist, he had it coming because, in the show, in the earlier questions, I had laid out the premise on which I made those remarks. For example, I had, made clear that during the campaign, during the 2023 presidential elections, Peter Obi had said, as a campaign promise, that he would, remove the system of fuel subsidy. He did. On day one, he said that. Everyone knows that. He said that. Now, the president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, on day one, announced the removal of fuel subsidy. But since then, Peter Obi has not rested in lambasting this government for removing the same fuel subsidy he promised Nigerians he will remove. Now, that is crossing the line of truth. So, that was the contest. So, everything I said about crossing the line was in reference to a specific question about, naming him or calling him or referring to him as a prophet of doom.
We're also going to look at what crossing the line means, specifically as regards his New Year message, because that appears to be the bone of contention here. But is there a sense to which you are concerned that Peter Obi says that message has now led to threats against his life, his family, and those around him?
No, see, that's exactly, I think, the point that concerns me. Because, there's nothing in the answer to the question I just referred to that suggested or suggests or that is capable of suggesting a threat in any way to Peter Obi or his family or his associates or his business. Nothing in that sentence. Because, people are just being entirely manipulative by saying, you cross the line, whatever. It was in reference to a question.
No, are you saying he's lying that there's actually no threat against his life? Is that what you're saying?
Yesterday, I did issue a statement in response to Peter Obi's allegation. Because, he went on his X handle and alleged, plain, and clear, that Felix Morka threatened his life by those comments. I did not threaten Peter Obi's life. I couldn't have threatened Peter Obi's life because, my comments were plain and simple in English language, in direct and specific reference to a question that was put to me, and I explained that in that interview.
Let us assume. Let us assume that he actually got some threat, and it perhaps come from a misunderstanding of what you said. Are you willing to? Because I heard the former president, former Vice President Atiku saying that the APC must issue a formal apology to Peter Obi, and what we are also hearing now is that the Peter Obi camp is also warning that any attempt to harm him would have severe consequences. I'm wondering if that bothers you, and if you are able to, bring some clarity to the issue of threat and say perhaps what I said was misunderstood. How do you react to the essence that there is a possibility that there are some threats against his life?
No, Peter Obi has not disclosed the source of the threat against him, if there is any, right? What I do know is that in his X handle, he stated and claimed that my statement that we're discussing constituted a threat to his life and that of his family and that of his associates. Now, the point I'm making here, which I need to make very clearly, is that I said nothing in that interview or anywhere else, anything that was capable of being understood as constituting a threat to Peter Obi. I didn't. So, having said that, now, Peter Obi, what shocked me, quite frankly, let me say this. After the interview, I began to see, a few traffic tweets where some of his followers were suggesting that, Peter Obi was threatened. I didn't think anything of it. I simply just waved it. Until later that evening, Peter Obi tweeted out that, my words in that interview, threatened him. He didn't say somebody threatened him because of what I said. He said, that my words constituted a threat to his life. And that's what I need Mr. Obi to explain. Because, you can't make such a heinous allegation against any human being without supplying the facts and the detail. Now, I have, so far, yesterday I laid out a statement where I clarified what I said in relation to the question that was asked to me. What I said about, Peter Obi, has what is coming to him, was meaning if Peter Obi was called a prophet of doom or was called a voodoo economist, I have supplied the facts, the basis for that conclusion. I said, if that is the case, then look, whatever name he is called, he could manage it. So, but how does that begin? In a normal political conversation, begin then to rise to the level of threatening the life of a human being. You see, what I'm saying, since Peter Obi made that allegation against me, many of his followers, I stated, elsewhere this morning, I have received over 400 threats of different shades, but of those 400, more than 200 of them were specific direct death threats to me by people who self-describe as his followers, who feel or are saying...
Now, Mr. Morka, that's the point. That is the exact point you're making, because you two are now saying that you have received threats, about 200 death threats. Is it possible that your own followers, or the followers of the APC, based on the interaction and the reactions we've gotten from you as regards this New Year message, have also sent similar threats to him?
See, look, if anyone did that, why would I be the one? I don't know. That's not information that within my knowledge. Peter Obi is the one who has to, because in his X, he never said that. He simply said, Felix Morka threatened my life. He didn't say somebody threatened my life who heard or read what Morka said. And my point to you is that nothing I said was capable or, would have given anyone a reason to threaten Mr. Obi. That is absolutely ridiculous. There's nothing in my, it was a question and answer. I'm talking to you right now. I was asked a question, which was, you guys called, the APC is called Peter Obi, prophet of doom, this and that. And I said, I am not the one to go on that manner, and offensive in that manner. I'm not the one to go on an offensive in that manner. Meaning, I'm not the one to call anybody, by that kind of name.
We'll
right?
get back.
But whatever name he's been called,
yes,
it fits him because, he has crossed the line of truth on many occasions.
We'll get back to that shortly, but some have said that the former Anambra State governor must still hold lots of political relevance, even after his defeat in 2023, to deserve such robust and what appears a comprehensive response from the ruling party following his New Year message. Do you think your initial response may have given some validation to that?
No. Now, if I may, on the 2nd of January, I issued a full, throttle response to Mr. Obi's New Year remarks. It wasn't an interview. It was a statement that I signed. And, when you read the statement was not so much about Peter Obi. It was more about pointing out those markers of progress under the administration. Simply saying, look, it's not all bad news. It's not all, gloom and doom as his message portrayed Nigeria. I said, look, Nigerians, I'm sure, are, seeing signs that the economic policies of this government are beginning to bear fruits. That was the tenor of my response to Peter Obi. This was an interview, like I'm doing with you. That was, an interview. And a question was asked, and I answered it. Otherwise, the ruling party offered Mr. Obi a comprehensive, well thought out, statement, which I'm sure you have seen or the TVC has even reported.
Hold up. Before we get into this conversation, I wanted you to respond specifically to the former vice president who's asking for a formal apology. How do you respond to it?
No, again, I said elsewhere this morning that the former vice president clearly did not read the transcript or transcription of that interview, or did not listen to the clip itself. So I'm willing to grant him the benefit of the doubt that he didn't before he signed or caused that statement to be issued. Because if he did, I would be grossly disappointed in the former vice president for saying the things he said. Because, he suggests that, a threat was indeed made to Peter Obi, which I insist that anyone who has any elementary basic understanding of English language will not come to that conclusion based on the question and the answer that was provided. Anyone who sees or listens or hears a threat in that thing clearly, intends to see a threat, not because there's a threat.
There is more to what he said, and I'm quoting him now. He says, quote, "A true democracy thrives on the healthy exchange of ideas, where the criticisms and contribution of opposition leaders like Peter Obi are seen as vital for the betterment of governance and promotion of public accountability," end quote. He's trying to say that perhaps his administration has been stifling the voice of opposition.
How so? See, look, I think there's something we need to clarify. We have a constitution that has a Bill of Rights. Every single right contained in the Bill of Rights of the Nigerian Constitution is not only available to Peter Obi or to Atiku Abubakar. It is available to every Nigerian, including myself, including you. I think it's somewhat of, some suggestion of tyranny on the part of, Atiku Abubakar or Peter Obi for that matter, to suggest that when the government puts out, record or information, they reserve the constitutional right to critique government's information or government's position. But when they put out information, the ruling party or the government for that matter does not have the right to also offer, review or critique of their own position. That is just hypocritical. I mean, how can you do that? Everyone who is in the political space, Mr. President, is the first citizen of this country. But when he speaks or he makes a policy, they all take it apart. They take it apart sometimes in a very crude, way. But when you attempt to offer a dissenting view to their own view, they claim that the government is stifling their opinion. That is, I think, undemocratic. And I think that that's what we need to be discussing.
Now, getting back to your position on crossing the line of truth, there are a few indices upon which Mr. Obi's New Year's message was built on. First of which is that it claims that Nigeria remains one of the poverty capitals of the world. Over 100 million people in extreme poverty, 150 million in multidimensional poverty, and that the situation has deteriorated significantly in the past 18 months. He also did mention that we have now fallen from having the highest GDP some 10 years ago, to ranking number 4, and our GDP now has fallen less than 50% of what it was in 2014, same as our per capita income, which is less than a third. Do you disagree with him based on the subject, based on the content of the subject and these examples that he's made?
No, you see, facts are facts. When you say that, X number of people are living in multidimensional poverty in Nigeria, you can say that. But the question that I would ask, because you say that, you don't just say that objectively, you're saying that in relation to the government of the day. You're saying, this government is basically exacerbating poverty. Because today, X number, so many, millions of people are living in multidimensional poverty. But the question that I think is relevant for Nigerians to consider is how many people were living in multidimensional poverty, before this president was inaugurated. That's a relevant question. And I'm not saying what he said or what anybody is saying. I'm not disputing or joining issues with anybody. But what was the number of Nigerians who were living in poverty or in multidimensional poverty before this president was inaugurated? What was the number of those living in multidimensional poverty before, Buhari, who was an APC president, was inaugurated in 2015? Now, let me say this clearly, and the figures are out there. As of 2014, 2015, more than 47% of Nigerians were living in multidimensional poverty. What is 47% of Nigerians in terms of the numbers of our population? What does it translate to in terms of numbers? Work it out. The point I'm making is that the poverty Mr. Obi is referring to did not begin with President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It didn't. It didn't even begin with President Buhari. You see, when you talk about multidimensional poverty in economics, it is not measured on a monthly, yearly basis. It's not. The discussion of wealth and poverty, quality of life of citizens, is measured usually in economics over a 10-year period. Because
which is exactly what is done. Because if you take the per capita income, for instance, it dropped from $3,500 to $3,500 to $1,000. The question is, do you think the life of the average Nigerian is better 18 months after President Tinubu?
There's a twin part of your question.
What's one?
The first part of your question is the drop, right? Don't forget that this government did exactly what Peter Obi promised to do by unifying the foreign exchange system. So if Naira was 460 to $1 when this president took power, today that system was unified, and as a result, Naira lost value and now goes to 1,500, 1,600 Naira to $1. What does that mean? That means that if I was, rich by, $1,000 back then, I had 460,000 Naira. But today, the Naira, value of the Naira has depreciated because of this intentional policy that was meant to save the Naira in the long term. So Peter Obi is being, just a bit, smart by simply quoting statistics that are not justified in the circumstances. My point is that the policy of the government, which Peter Obi himself had promised he was going to implement, is what this government is implementing. And as a result, Naira has taken a hit. But that is not, the position a statesman like Peter Obi, he should acknowledge that this is happening as a result of this policy that's meant to strengthen the Naira in the long term. So it's a false statistic, which is why I say that he is crossing the line of truth. He ought to know better. That, because if Peter Obi is unaware that as a result of this policy, Naira lost value, and that you can't, when you say per capita income, somebody who was earning $2,000 by 460 to a Naira cannot earn $2,000 by 1,500 to $1.
Mr. Morka,
that is it's simple economics.
We have run out of
just
time.
being disingenuous.
We have completely run out of time. We probably will have this conversation subsequently. But are you committed to dousing what appears the political tension?
Okay, let me say that.
Considering all these threats that are flying around.
No, you see, look, I don't think dousing the tension is really my say. I am the one who has been libeled in the extreme. Peter Obi has put out front page news everywhere that mock threaten his life. And you know what? I have a reputation, and I care about my reputation. So I intend to have Peter Obi prove and demonstrate how indeed I threatened his life, because I did it.
Felix Morka is the National Publicity Secretary of the APC. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That's our show today, everyone. Thanks for being a part of it. You can watch it all over again at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye.